Welcome to Lesson 7 of Module 1 and 2 for Investigating Science. So in our work booklet today, you will see the scientific method comprehension activity. So pause the video now to complete that activity. Today we're looking at 2 inquiry questions. So how does primary data provide evidence for further investigation? And how does the collection and presentation of primary data affect the outcome of a scientific investigation? We are going to be looking at our descriptors again here to develop a method to collect primary data for a practical investigation. And again, we're working on our assessment. So today is more like a bootcamp set of information. So then you can go ahead and complete your assessment. So let's have a look at our assessment scaffold first. So here we have the scaffold that you will find on your Google Classroom, and we have basic sections here. So I just want to go through with everyone the different formatting sections first before I go through the different sections. So we're going to make sure we have a header in our document, which if we just double click up in the space up here, always make size 8 and position on the right hand side, and then we can also add in our page number down the bottom here, and so that's really helpful for our investigation and making sure our document looks like a scientific investigation. We'll see here the subheadings. Don't be bound by those, but obviously this will allow you to have your information portrayed properly. I've already got some questions here to start your background information. And what I'm going to ask you to do in your background information is to use secondary sources. So you can see here that I've got this little 1 here. And in fact, where that comes from is, so we can see this little number here, which is used from inserting a footnote. So it's a way that we can have our references linked here. Okay, but when we're going to use our add-ons here, our EasyBib, manage our bibliography here. And so when we're referencing information throughout our document, we'll see this pop up here and we can cite our information as required. Then we've got our different sections here, our annotated reference list section, and our logbook, and you can see that's how our references are portrayed at the end. So let's head back to our lesson now. So we're talking about variables in lesson 6 quite a bit. But they're important because they allow us to determine the data we're going to collect and what's the most appropriate way that we can collect that information. In our method, we must have only one independent variable, which we looked at before, and we either need to explicitly write those, but also making sure that our method is clear enough that indicates we know what an independent variable is and we're controlling all of our other variables. So making sure we're really specific there. When we write our method, nothing must be left up to the imagination. We're going to be using numbered steps, and each step must refer to the specific equipment being used and the action taking place. So we're not just going to measure out water, we're going to measure 100 mils of water using our measuring cylinder. So while it might seem silly, okay, because scientists can make up their own mind, we want to leave nothing to the imagination. We want to know that someone can take that method and run with it. And the results being collected should be part of our method and make sure it's explicitly written there. You would have, when I just said that example step, so to measure, each step will start with a verb. So we're making sure we're using specific action verbs, so not things like get or pour. Pour is actually a good one, but not things like get or those kind of words that are really not high order. They're not actually telling us what we're doing. And then when we talk about data, we're making sure that we have a way that our results can be collected, and we should be able to design that before we actually even perform our experiment. So making sure that we know what our independent variables and know what our dependent variable is, because that will help us design our results table. What we didn't have in our document, our scaffold that we looked at, was a risk assessment section, and that's because I'm going to show you the software that we're using, so it will perform an appendix of your investigation. But when we talk about risk assessments, we're looking at hazards, and they're anything that has the potential to harm the health or safety of a person. And we can see on the right what's called a matrix. And so this matrix allows us to identify the risks associated with different things. Okay, and obviously we're looking at wanting down in the low section, not anything that's very high. But we know with some pieces of equipment and chemicals that we're using that it's not uncommon for things to be very high. It will then just mean we need to assess that situation and make sure control measures are put in place. These are some other different ways that we can look at hazards and looking at controls, okay, and how we can make sure that we can control and make sure nobody gets hurt during our investigations. So in class today, we're going to look at the video about why it's important to write exact instructions and see if we can follow the instructions that the people on video are giving us. We'll see the bouncing balls experiment. So we're going to have some more practice about writing an experimental method, making sure that we have accuracy, validity, and reliability within our method. We're going to be looking at the risk assessment, and then we're going to use the risk assessment template to make up a mock risk assessment for the swimming carnival. And then we're going to complete our assessment activities using the scaffold that we've looked at previously. And then finally, this is risk assess. So if you don't have access to risk assess, you really should have. It's not expensive, and it will save you lots of time in terms of making your risk assessment. So we have a login, and then it will look like this, and then we'll be able to start our risk assessment, and it will collate all of that information, but also acts as an ordering tool for our lab assistant. So risk assess is the platform that we're going to use for our investigations once we've designed them. That's lesson 7. Make sure you tune in for lesson 8.